He's the assistant administrator for the National Marine Fisheries Service, head of NOAA.
He's the assistant administrator for NOAA's Fisheries Service.
I'll get it right at the beginning. Hey, can you tell me why Dr. Jane Lipchenko wasn't here today?
Well, her schedule just prevented her from being here, but she also, I think, wanted me to be here particularly because of the work that I've been doing closely and taking responsibility for a lot of these corrective actions.
Is anybody at NOAA worried about criminal charges being assessed?
Well, we know that if the Inspector General found anything that was criminal in nature, it would be his duty to turn that over to the Justice Department. To our knowledge, that has not happened.
Can you tell me what your background was before you became the National Marine Fisheries Service?
Well, most recently I was the Deputy Secretary for the Department of Natural Resources in Maryland. I have a long history in natural resources management work at the state and federal levels, and particularly in fisheries management on the Atlantic coast.
How would you ensure to all the fishermen out there that the money that they're paying through fines isn't going to be used in the future for inappropriate?
So I think a lot of the work that has transpired over the last year has really been focused on getting the policies and procedures in place to better manage these programs in general and the asset forfeiture fund in particular. So the Secretary issued a new policy that strictly guides the ways in which those funds can be utilized, and then we've put in place new control procedures to ensure that the employees that are using those funds are using them appropriately.
How did this happen? I mean, how did that money get to be used for boats and trips that had nothing to do with enforcement?
Well, I think what the Inspector General identified was a lack of clear policy and procedure with respect to the use of these funds historically. And identifying some of those shortcomings has allowed us to really pinpoint the kind of corrective actions that need to be put in place to ensure a much better situation going forward.
We're going to take a question from the other two, and then we'll have to go to the next.
Just real quick,
sure.
Do you know who actually owns the cash shares now in Alaska or even on the East Coast here in Gloucester? Do you have a list of the actual owners of the cash shares?
Well, in the case of, we have a list of the people in each case who have had historical permits. Whether there is financial backing behind those people is not necessarily always apparent in our...
But the catch shares were given, and then they...
If you have questions about the catch shares on the West Coast...
Well, I'd just like to ask my question. I mean, are you going to follow who eventually ends up owning the catch shares? There's been allegations that a Goldman Sachs or hedge funds and people of that nature will own them. Will investment people own it, or will they always reside in the community where the fish are fished?
Yeah, so first of all, each management plan allocates initially, generally...
I know initially, but...
generally based on past fishing practices and past catch records. All of the management plans then also put in place certain controls with respect to the ability to accumulate quota over time, rules against excess quota accumulation, rules that protect in some fashion or another the sustenance of business needed in those fishing communities.
There was a well-publicized audio, actually, of a gentleman at the Millikan Institute who actually said that the catch shares would be something that would be used as an investment vehicle and actually pretty much pumped it that way. So I guess what I'm trying to find out is, will NOAA track over time who will own those catch shares, and will they always reside in the community in terms of ownership, or is there the potential for hedge funds and other investors to actually own them and control the right to fish as a result?
So that's generally prescribed by the management plan, and generally there are controls put in place to ensure protection of communities and to ensure fair distribution over time of...
So you can assure everybody that a Goldman Sachs or a hedge fund... So this is your press person that doesn't want you to answer the question regarding who might own the catch shares in the future. Is that what it is? You don't want to answer who... Is it possible that a hedge fund... Here's my question. Is it possible that a hedge fund might in the future in New York own the catch shares for Gloucester, Massachusetts?
It is possible that a hedge fund might back a fisherman who has some quota within the constraints of a management plan and within the constraints that are imposed in those management plans regarding the excess accumulation of catch shares. Within the constraints of those controls, it's certainly possible that there would be
So Goldman Sachs may be the one that might ultimately control the catch shares in Gloucester.
Well,
I mean, that's what you're saying. That's possible.
I'm suggesting that within the limits of the management plan. It's
So that's
possible
possible.
there could be investors backing certain fishermen who have quota share. Yes.
If other public
There's lots
resources,
of hypotheticals
if
here
other
we get
public
into.
resources get overused, for instance, hiking in Yosemite, should we privatize the right for someone to hike in Yosemite?
So I don't think actually the imposition of a cat shares program necessarily changes the possibility that there might have been private investors backing fishermen under, for example, the old system. So fishermen have fishermen have allocations. They have authority to fish in certain ways under each of these management plans that are set up by the Fishery Management
If my
Council.
son wants to go fishing in Gloucester,
Yeah, let
why
me
should
finish this and then I'm
if
gonna
my
go.
son wants to become a fisherman in Gloucester, why can't he buy a boat, fish under the quota? Why does he have to walk potentially into Wall Street and work a deal or a contract on a limited basis with some investment banker to have the right to fish? I mean,
So under most management systems that were in place, cat share or otherwise, you would have to find a way within the management plan to acquire access to quota, a days at sea permit
Sure.
or a quota share.
You
under
would get a
cat share
permit
system.
that wouldn't
So
be
your
based-
Your son is not disadvantaged any more than under a cat share program than he might have been disadvantaged under if he wanted to start from scratch under a days at sea program.
except
where
there
he
are
would have to go
people
out and acquire
there are
permits.
people who are radical environmentalists, EDF aligned, who are saying they're going to hold on to cat shares and actually take them off the system so that there will be less fishing, and as a result the fishing prices go up, which has resulted, let's face it, the cost of fish has gone up, has it not, as a result?
Well, the value of a fish at the dockside going up is to the advantage of fishermen.
And so,
Now,
so you're in favor of that?
I think that it's to the great advantage of fishermen to be able to bring fish to the dock when they are most valuable. Other than that,
So
I'm
that's-
not going to speculate.
Would that be a
against-
policy of NOAA to increase the cost of fish then to help the fishermen? Is that a policy?
It would be a policy of NOAA to work very closely with the councils to put in place management approaches that are most beneficial to the fishermen and the fishing communities in the region affected by that management plan.
Okay,
And
thank you for your time.
Okay. Did you have a question?
Do you think any of those restaurants
I think so.
No, we're perfectly receptive to all of these lines of inquiry. Absolutely.
Thank you very much,
Thank
sir.
you. Okay.